Okay, I wanted to give you a little bit more information about the Protean drum. Maybe you've seen the main Protean film over on the SONOR YouTube channel. So this is a kind of side film to that. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the tuning method and specifically the Protean tuning keys. Tuning is something that I get a lot of questions about, and something that I've spent a long time thinking about, practicing, talking to other drummers, engineers, looking at clips on YouTube, and basically my practical experience of having to tune a lot. When I'm away doing drum clinics, it's quite often the case that I get a brand new set at every clinic. So a kit this size, what we've got, 14 skins that I've got to tune every day. So, things have evolved in my idea about tuning and how to quickly get the best sound I can from the drums in the most repeatable, accurate way. Now, the Protean drum key, this has a protruding part on the top because I wanted something that I could sort of twist quite quickly, which saves me a lot of time in getting all the bolts down. Now, there are other drum keys that have protruding parts on the top, but the ones that I've experienced are metal, and they have kind of crisscross patterns on them, or some kind of pattern for grip, like sort of knurling. But the problem with that is, when you start to go finger tight and actually put some pressure on that part, it starts to tear your fingers up. So in discussion with SONOR, I wanted something that was, slightly squeezy, but still had good grip on it, and something that's not gonna, give me blisters. Now, at the point when I'm changing a head, the important part is to obviously get the new head on and get it down to what we used to call finger tight. And in the old days, we'd be doing it down here like this. But of course you get your fingers covered in grease, and you've got the same problem as before where, the pattern, the lines on the actual bolt are gonna start giving you blisters on your fingers. So now I can go finger tight just with the top part of the SONOR Protean key. Now, the important part for me is that the head goes on absolutely evenly in all the way around. And to help me with that, you'll find on the underside of the heaviest dampening ring, faint numbers. And these numbers line up with the bolt. So you line them up and there's a 1 and a 1, a 2 and a 2, 3 and a 3, 4 and a 4, 5 and a 5. And in my opinion, that is the most logical, even way to put the head on. So I put the keys in the 1 position, and I start to go finger tight. Now, as soon as I start to hit resistance with one key, I stop and catch it up with the other key. I don't just go crank, 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 because the head's getting pulled like that. I want the head to be pulled exactly together. So when I start to feel resistance on this side, I make sure that this side is at the same level of resistance. This is a kind of feel thing, and you'll get used to that. It's through the sort of feedback of the muscles in your fingers. So I feel like this has reached pretty much the same level of resistance. Then I go to number 2, and I go to the same point. I'm feeling the torque in the bolts through the top part. Now I go to number 3. Okay, now I go to number 4. And it feels like the same amount of resistance. Go to number 5. In fact, you can already hear the drum is starting to come into pitch. Now I go back to number 1 again and just go around. See, there's a little bit of a difference. Go to number 2 again. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5. Okay, now I'm ready to start tuning. And at this point I go to the handles on the keys. And in very small turns, like a quarter to half a turn, you just move it that much. I'm following the number system as I go. That's number 5. Back to number 1. And so on, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I put like 3 or 4 turns on that one, and then I put 3 or 4 turns on that one, when I come to this bolt will be loose because the rim is tight here and here. This bolt will be standing out. So all these kind of little calculations of turning, you know, quarter turn here, quarter turn there, quarter turn here. If I'd done a lot of turns on these 2 bolts and these 2 bolts, you know, this wouldn't make any sense anymore because this bolt would be loose now. I wouldn't know where I am. So at that point, okay, I've just put a very small amount of tension on the head. And you can hear that that is higher than that. So then I'd move round to here and start tuning up here. Still needs to come up some more. You're always working on a moving target. This isn't a perfect science because as you tighten these bolts, it is affecting the head all the way round in a small amount. So it's a bit of a sort of black science, but if you think about it logically and work methodically around the drum, always with 2 keys, you're going to stand the best chance of getting the head on nice and even. Now, sometimes it helps me to put my finger in the middle to hear the difference in pitch. If you're working on a floor tom, for instance, an 18-inch floor tom, and the pitch is very low, you can push quite hard. As long as you remain with the same amount of pressure on the center of the head, you can raise the overall pitch to help identify which note is, which lug is higher or lower. And that's particularly useful, say, on a bass drum or on the lower floor toms. So that's basically my tuning method. I hope you get a chance to try the Protean keys and of course the Protean snare drum. Now, as you know, the Protean snare drum, one of the main features is that it takes advantage of the beautiful dual glide SONOR Snare Strainer, which I absolutely love. I've had a lot of snare strainers in my time, and I've got a lot of snare drums, and I honestly think this is the best snare strainer I've ever used. And of course, it's got this added advantage that the clips detach. And as you'll see from the Protean snare drum film, you know, you can remove the snare wires very quickly, which is great for tuning the bottom head. And it's also great for changing snare wires, which I've, you know, designed 3 different types of 8-strand snare wires, which you can interchange very quickly. One thing to note is that you'll notice there's 3 holes on the clip this side and 2 holes on the clip this side. The 2 holes go to the strainer side that's got the handle, and the 3 holes goes to the butt side. There is a scientific reason for this, but it's too long to tell you. Now, something just good practice is that you should try to keep the snare wires nice and even in the middle of the head. And what I mean is that the clip that holds the snare wires is not too far over this way or too far over this way. And you can adjust with these knobs to get that right. You also want to make sure that the clip that's holding the snare wires is not at an angle. These should be nice and straight parallel with each other. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. Now, when it came to the look of the drum, I wanted to choose a colour that I thought was neutral enough that it would fit pretty much with any drum set. Now, if I'd made this snare drum, let's say violet with yellow and pink stripes around it, it probably isn't going to fit with your drum kit. If you've got a green or red, blue, whatever colour drum kit you've got, the only thing that you can really put with it is black or white. So I liked the idea of a very plain, simple black finish. And in fact, this is a kind of satin finish, which is almost impossible to leave fingerprints on. I liked the idea of making the drum, a kind of working drum that people would want to have with their kit every day. I didn't want to make a snare drum that had the most incredible, real, let's say African waterfall bubinga veneer that was so rare and lovely that A, it's going to make the snare drum 5 times more expensive than it need be, and secondly, you're going to be worried about leaving it set up in a pub and going off for some fish and chips. The holy grail for me, the goal I was always looking for, was to have a great fat backbeat sound, or at least be able to get that, with tuning and dampening from a shallow drum. Because, when I've played deeper drums, 6.5, 7, 8-inch drums, I can get a good fat backbeat sound, but the articulation of the ghost notes were always a struggle to play and a struggle to hear. So with a reasonably shallow drum like this, I've still got the advantage of a shallow drum in that I'm getting the ghost note and articulation from it, but added to that, still having a great fat backbeat sound. And that's the sort of 2 most important things to me in a snare drum.